So what just happened? I gave everybody a chance to make $100 with no risk. Well, the only risk is coming up here. So it was a risk-free $100. How many people were sitting there in the audience thinking, man, I sort of want to raise my hand, but I don't know if there's a catch, or I don't want to look silly up here. But there was an opportunity here, right? There was an opportunity to make money, maybe have some fun, and she got the $100 anyway. Now, how many times does this happen in our life? How many times do we have this fear, this resistance, when we get an opportunity? And how many times do we not raise our hand and that opportunity goes right on by us? So how many people here, what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about why that fear and resistance takes place, why we procrastinate, and then I'm going to tell you how to get over that procrastination. So when I talk about these things, when I talk about procrastination, fear, and resistance, I know something comes up in your mind, something comes up in your consciousness. There's that one thing. Did you always want to start that business, write that book, run that marathon, ask that girl out, go for that awesome job? What's your one thing? And I want you to think about that for a second. And then take that, and I want you to store it in the back of your mind, because we're going to refer to it through this presentation. Now, would you agree that if I helped you achieve that and get on the path of that this would be a successful session? Good. I'm glad you agreed, because if you said no, I don't know what I talk about for the next hour. So it's good. Let me give you a story about how this relates to me. I'll give you a real-life story about how procrastination, fear, and resistance cost me a lot of money in my life. We call it opportunity cost. So at 23 years old, I was living in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where I grew up, and I was what they call an IT foot soldier. So if you're working at your desk and your printer broke, you called me, I would come up and I'd have to be the guy who crawls under your desk and fixes a little wire to your printers. And at 6'9", that is not a pretty sight, right? Yes. It was my entry-level job out of university, so I was okay with it. And I was working for an engineering software company, and the company's name was Al Gore. So it's not Al Gore, the presidential candidate. It was ALGOR, stands for algorithm. So it's an engineering software company. And I got up, and I went to the server room, and I saw, and Rob Anderson, no relation, but it was our IT director, one of the traditional Coke rim glasses. I think Beth Z probably knew him back in the day. Great guy, super intelligent. We have this big, old, huge brown box in our server room. I'm like, oh, cool, what's this? Like, checking it out, and there's this big, huge computer, bigger than I've ever seen in my life. I remember this is 20 years ago, and he explained to me, this is a web server. Like, a web server? What are you talking about? So he starts to explain what the internet is, and we were literally one of the handful of companies that were on the internet 20 years ago, because it was an engineering software company, very forward-thinking type people. And I said, oh, and he starts explaining web pages, et cetera, and I said, well, how do people know where to go? And he goes, well, they go to www.algore.com. And I go, oh, so we automatically get our company name. He goes, no, you actually have to register it with Network Solutions. So I'm thinking, wow, man, this internet thing may really catch on, right? It makes a lot of sense to me. I go, why don't I get, and this is a true story, I go, why don't I go out and get Coke.com and Pepsi.com? Because once it gets rolling, these companies are going to want their own domain name. Now, does anybody know or remember how much it was to register a domain name 20 years ago with Network Solutions? I think $300. Yeah, it's not like GoDaddy, $14.90, $5.99. It was $300. So to get Coke.com and Pepsi.com, I would have to invest $600. Now, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, 20 years ago, that equals 600 beers. Yes. Which was a lot of beers for me. For Mac, that's maybe 2 weeks, but for me, that was a couple months, right? And so I made the decision not to do it. Yes. Because if I did do it, I probably still would be a professional speaker today. But instead of flying Southwestern out of the United States, I'd probably have my own private plane. But that's just one little case of where this resistance, where this fear held me back in my life. Let's take another one. And again, my dad means the best for me, but let's take something with my mom. I'm 5 years old, I get an A+ on a test. I go, hey Mom, check it out, I got an A+. She goes, oh Mike, you're perfect, I love you. You're perfect, I love you. It's the same connection, isn't it? I'm making these connections that perfection equals love. Now, the next time I can take a hard test or an easy test, which test do I take? The easy test. Now, the next time I can take an easy test or no test, which test do I take? No test, because there's no chance of failure, so there's no chance of rejection, so there's no chance of losing my love. So now I want you to go back and take that situation we talked about that you're procrastinating. Think about how that relates to you not taking your test. How does this apply to that? How are you hiding? How are you not putting yourself out there? So let's take it to the next level. So how do you implement this into your day-to-day life? We talked about changing your definition of success from winning to playing in the game. How do you play in the game? You experiment in your life. Now, what does this mean, and why do we do this? The thing about experimenting is the only way you fail an experiment is not to conduct it. So anytime I experiment with something in life, no matter what happens, I win because I learn from it, because that's an experiment is about learning. And it takes all the pressure off of being perfect. I have a friend, Mary. Mary came up to me and she said, this is a friend who I was helping out. She said, hey, I just went to the doctor and I'm freaked out. I said, why are you freaked out? She goes, well, I just got told that I have celiac disease. Now, celiac disease means you can't eat wheat. You're allergic to what's called gluten, which is the protein in wheat. And I said, okay, well, why is that freaking you out? She goes, well, everything I eat, I eat bread. I eat bread for breakfast. I eat pasta for dinner. Every one of my meal, I have wheat in there. So it's freaking, I don't know how I can change my whole eating habits for the rest of my life. That's very intimidating. It'd be very intimidating to me. So I said, okay, well, you don't have to change your eating habits for the rest of your life. She goes, well, what do you mean? I said, you only have to change your eating habits for the next 2 days. We're going to do a 2-day experiment. So is it difficult to change your eating habits for the rest of your life on a main staple? Yes, it is. Can I change my eating habits for the next 2 days? Yeah, that's pretty easy. I can do that. So we went through a 2-day experiment. She's like, you know what? It wasn't that bad. I got to figure out, so this is what worked well. This is what didn't work well in my experiment. Okay, so let's do a 5-day experiment. Let's remember what we did well, and let's change what didn't work well. And then we did a 5-day experiment. And then we did a 7-day experiment, and now she knows, and then she eased into it. So do you see how experiments can help change your life? Now, take that situation that we've been storing away. We found how we're not taking our tests, and we're going to start showing up. What are some experiments you can do to get you to your goal? If you want to run a marathon, your experiment is running twice the next week for a mile. That means you can run more if you want to. If you're going to write a book, if you've been putting off writing a book, because what happens is when we have, and they've studied this in psychology, when we have these great big grandiose goals, our brain gets freaked out. But when things are right in front of us, small, defined, they're very easy to do. So if I have a book, and again, I don't know where to start, I use the Pomodoro method, and what I do is I say for 25 minutes, I'm going to go in and I'm going to write the table of contents. And it's going to be an experiment. And if it sucks, I'm going to throw it away. But you know what? It's going to be a starting point. And then you say, okay, now that I have a table of contents, I'm going to do my next experiment. I'm going to write chapter 1. And again, if it's not good, that's okay. I'm making progress on it. So just think about how you can turn what you want to get to into an experiment. And you can run these experiments all different places in your life, and it just takes the pressure off, and it opens up a whole new world to trying things. Because I'll tell you what, the people that play in the game are the people that win. And I want you to learn as much as you can. I want you to go out there and create. Because again, as business people, that's what we do in this world. We create. And when we're able to play in the game and play 100%, then we create great things. So thank you for being part of my experiment. Take this and create your own. Thank you.